master's degree, and I won't make that mistake again because I don't want to have to pay it out. And people put on their owner finance addendum that their buyer is paying for our servicing fees, and then it goes in the deed of trust under the grantor's responsibilities. So, you know, taxes, insurance, loan servicing. So it's not a fee, it's service that doesn't cost you anything, because your buyer's paying for it. Or ideally, your buyer should be paying for it. Ones that transfer in and haven't had that in there, you know, the lender's paying for it, and it's coming off of their profit. I think keeping all my profit's a good plan. Just going to throw that out there. Oh. Contract for deeds are old and not something we can use anymore. We do have, still see rent to owns, but they can only be for 179 days, and then you have to transfer title. I've seen people have attorneys that reissue a new lease before 180 days, and they keep them on a lease until they make sure that their buyer can pay, but I'm not positive they wouldn't be able to pierce that, because the law pretty much says 179 days, at 180 you have to transfer title. Does everyone understand what transfer of title is? It's when you record your deed of trust to ensure that the buyer's name goes on the county records. Okay. Just making sure. Due on sale clause and land trust. People avoid, this is specifically to wrap mortgages. Mortgages state that if you transfer title, that they can call the note due. We've seen 4 notes called in 22 years. And one of them, the title company they closed at did not pay the right amount to the taxes at the end of the year. They reversed the last 2 digits, so the taxes were short paid by 9 cents when they closed. And the underlying mortgage did not hold escrow, and it was a small credit union known as American Airlines Credit Union to wrap one of those. Of the 4 loans we've had called, 2 of them were through American Airlines Credit Union. So be very careful if you're dealing with them. People then unwrap their deals sometimes and put them into land trusts. We had people have stopped that, and they send a copy of the land trust over to the mortgage company, and they just say, okay. And some people just start them off within a land trust. It can be tricky for the buyer to get the property homesteaded to reduce their taxes sometimes when they are in land trusts. So they will be paying a higher amount for property taxes because some counties won't make them eligible for the homestead on there. So they have to be listed in the land trust, take a copy of the land trust to the appraisal district to get their homestead on there to get their property taxes reduced. And the goal is to make a buyer's payment affordable, so we want the buyers to be applying for their homesteads. We send out a notice inside the 1098s when we mail them out and ask them if they need help filling out paperwork and how to do it, to let us know. Buyers who do not have a social or a driver's license or a Texas ID card in most counties will not qualify for a homestead in the state of Texas, which pretty much eliminates your I-10 borrowers unless they've taken their issued card and gotten a driver's license with it. Does that make sense? Or does everyone understand? I was going to say it doesn't make sense on a house, but it's just a fact how it is. Steps to setting up a transaction. I kind of skipped forward because we started talking about other topics, but identifying the property to be sold. Is it better as a property to owner finance, or are you going to make more money as a rental? Those are things you need to take into consideration where more cash flow will come for you. Advertising. I think this is kind of behind y'all, but I like bandit signs unless I'm, what's that city south of Arlington?
Mansfield?
Mansfield, don't put a sign up in Mansfield. They charge a lot of money. Yeah, they're fast. I had a guy actually follow me up when I was over in Balch Springs when I was putting out signs. And he came up and he goes, I've been looking for you. And I was just like, really? Because he had a bunch of our signs. I said, oh, I was putting them up for someone else, I told him. But I kind of was. I was putting them up for the company that I own. So I was technically an employee of the company. So I felt like it was kind of a gray area. So, but you can put them on. Craigslist is kind of old. I actually have used the Nextdoor app. Does anyone have a Nextdoor app in their neighborhood? I've used that, and I like it. So there's lots of different ways. Agents are wonderful.
Your members' website, if you're a member of this group,
Yeah.
Get a website, post your property on there for sale or rent it.
I actually make up a sheet of terms, so they have different options based on how much they're putting down and with the different interest rate to give people an idea of what their payment would be, because I like to kind of have my payment come in where the rental market is, so it's makes it worthwhile. And if they get to a point where they're struggling to make the payment, they could rent it out. They could figure out that it's actually just better off making their payment because it's close to whatever the rental market is. I don't know if anyone else structures their deals like that, but I like to make it so it's affordable.
I had a person, I started to sell a house under owner finance, and the first question that always came to me was, well, what are your terms and how much are you selling it for? And being the first one I did, I had no idea what my terms were. And I said, well, this is what I'm selling it for. And I said also, well, it depends on how much you put down. I was asking 10 to 20% down. But that was always in my mind, I'm terrible at analyzing stuff and having to have things put in place before I move. And so that I wanted to understand that better, but I didn't know how to go about that.
Well, I take the price that I'm selling the house for, and I require a down payment. So you can calculate one at 10% down, so you take it off there, and you're going to put in what the property taxes are and what the estimated insurance is for a covered house with contents. So for an owner-occupant insurance policy, and I have an agent I use, and they'll call and give me an estimate as what it will be with fair credit, because many people who are in the owner finance market don't have great credit, or they're self-employed and they need to build it up, because it's much easier to refinance an existing loan than it is to get new credit. So we have a lot of people, we on average have about 20 to 50 houses a month that refinance out, so we're doing a lot of payoffs on people who are able to move on because they've been in an owner finance house. But I like to break down the price and put in, this is your principal and interest, and know what rate you want to sell it at, whether you're selling at 8, 9, 10, and calculate it out. MyCalculators.com has an excellent loan calculator on it. So you can put the principal and interest in the term. So if you're going to do offer it 15, 20, or 30 years, 360 months, 300 months, or 240 months, because you have to put the number of months in, and it'll give you what the principal and interest will be, and you can break it down on a fee sheet. I usually offer 3 different options, and if they want to do something else, then we can go from there if they'd like to put more down, or they would like to go to a 15-year note. I always point out you can always pay it off faster if you wanted to, but the safety of putting on a 30-year, then when you don't have extra money, if it runs around Christmas time or school's starting and they haven't budgeted for school clothes because your child apparently grew 3 inches over the summer and none of his clothes fit anymore, that they have the ability to pay slightly less. But I think it's important to have those already written down so you know where you're going when people ask the questions. If you need help doing it, there are a lot of resources in this room to help you. Huh?
I'll throw in a couple things. I'm not from Missouri, but I like to show people things. And going back to what I said earlier about, planning ahead, being prepared instead of reacting. So over the years, I've realized people like options. They like to see what their options, their choices are. So I was doing so much owner financing, I wanted to be able to give people options. Now, in the back of my mind is for selfish reasons, I want more money out of them, right? I don't want just the minimum down payment. I want as much money as I can get. And you got to be careful because the laws change now. Going back to the RMLO topic, technically requires an RMLO to negotiate terms. But you can present options to people. So I made this fancy little spreadsheet that gives 6 different payment scenarios. Here's my asking price, here's a down payment. I include taxes and insurance because I will never sell a house without being escrowed, and she establishes the escrow accounts if it doesn't already have one. And then I put 10% down, 15% down, 20% down, and I lower the interest rate a little bit on each of those. And in some cases, I'll make the term go, you know, from 360 to 420 or the other way. You know, if I know that they're trying to play with a certain price range, monthly payment. So I have all these different scenarios and I let them pick on what they can do and what best suits them. Well, guess what that did for me? I was asking, it's either 15 or 20,000 down. I think I told you this many times. I ended up with $55,000 down payment because he saw he could get a lower interest rate and get the payments where he wanted it. And, I mean, it just, so be prepared is what I'm trying to say, and give people options. People like the options, but you got to give them everything. Don't try and cover it up. You know, you need to have insurance estimates. You need to have property tax estimates. You know, so that you have numbers. And I tell them, property taxes and insurance could change every month. I mean, every year. Every year. So, you know, if the payment's of $1,100 PITI today, it may not be next year. So I just find that so helpful. And, you know, I have very little problems. We've had a couple problems with owner finance folks, but not very many. And I attribute it to some of the things that we do up front, trying to prevent problems.
And we found that the greatest number of borrowers that are successful have put down 10% or more on those loans. That there is a very low default rate on those. I was going to add something to what you said. Oh, when you're looking at the property taxes to estimate, you want to make sure that you're taking the estimate on a property without like frozen taxes because they're over 65 or a homestead on it, because the first year they're not going to be able to qualify for it unless they close December 27th. They can qualify right away because they own the house as of January 1st. So I add up the tax rates and have a number, and then I multiply it by close to I sell it less 20% is how I found the best estimate to use when I'm estimating the property taxes. It's important to make sure that you're giving them a realistic one. We had a borrower who closed in July, and the title company closed it, and they estimated the taxes at $271 a month for their escrow, but their taxes are $8,000, and $271 does not come close to having $8,000 in their escrow account to pay taxes. And so we went back and analyzed it for him and raised the payment. And the lady's like, well, I would never have bought it if that was the case. And I said, well, I don't know how they came up with $271 to close on, you know, because it was actually on an old HUD. It wasn't on a CD. Page 2, it estimated $271 a month, but they attached a tax surge showing the taxes were $8,230 something a month or a year. Those numbers don't equal up. They were never going to equal up, and I don't know if it was an error when they did it, but I mean, they were pretty adamant that it was my fault, and I explained that it wasn't and showed them, and they're like, well, whose fault is it? And I'm like, I don't know, did you know the taxes were $8,000? And she said yes. And I said, well, if you knew the taxes were $8,000, $271 was never going to cover $8,000 a year.
Can you repeat your rule of thumb calculation? Can you repeat your rule of thumb calculation?
Oh, sure. I add up the tax rates from, go to the appraisal district, add up the tax rates. I take what I'm selling it for and estimate it at 20% less. It's just a rough estimate. Don't, you know, to get close to what the taxes will be, and then I multiply it by that to have what I think the tax value will come in at. When they apply for a homestead, hopefully it'll be going down. That's only if the property had frozen taxes on it for the last 15 years, or a disability. Because Dallas County, if you live in the city of Dallas and you're disabled, you have 0 tax rate. So if you buy a house that has no taxes, you need to have an idea what they're going to be. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think where a lot of people get confused is they'll look at what the assessment is today. And maybe it's assessed for $150,000, but the market's gone up and you're buying it for $210,000.
Yeah.
The appraisal district's going to know you paid $210,000 because they check MLS, they know the sales.
Right.
And so you can't go with what the current buyer, homestead or not, whatever, you just cannot look at the, you look at what you're paying, not what your current assessment is.
The goal is to set the buyer up for success and be able to make
Yeah.
the payment that's there. And you want to be as close to that as you can. I don't want to over escrow, but I definitely don't want to be behind and have them have a shortfall, a deficit, because it would be for last year as a deficit, and then you have a shortfall for the upcoming year, and you're raising their taxes up to cover what they were short last year, plus the increase for this year, and it is tough. And the buyer that came in with the $271, their payment was, when we estimated, when we pulled their tax records, October, when they were certified, their payment was going up over $1,000 a month. But we went back to the seller to collect from January 1st to when they closed in June, the increased value also. He hasn't sent us portion in. He said he'd see if they performed. But
Another place to advertise is Facebook Marketplace.
yes, actually bought some puzzles on there last weekend when everyone was sick. That was about all we could do is do puzzles at our house. But yeah, it's a great place to advertise. I wasn't sharing our germs. So I made an example of a transaction using $100,000 because it's an easy number. Not that there's a whole lot of those unless you're like moving farther out of the main city area. And the reason I set up a first and a second is if you need to hit your prime spot for your loan to value for people buying notes. Robin could tell you that probably more than I could, but you don't want to be at 92% of loan to value because you're going to have to discount it down depending on who's buying your note. But they usually, we found, is between 75 to 80% is their spot. Where do you go? You do a non-performing, right?
I'm performing as well, but it just depends on, there's no exact number because you have to look at the collateral, you have to look at the notes, you have to look at is anything escrow, just a lot of factors. But yeah, you could say anywhere from 70 to 80 is probably typical if it's a decent note and performing, and truly performing, not re-performing.
Yeah, not with a modification 6 months
Yeah.
ago. But that's what we see across the board, is that they're wanting them between, I said 75 to 80, she's saying 70 to 80. But putting your first lien at 70% was actually what I put here, and keeping a second lien. So if you've wrapped money, or you have a private lender and they want to be paid out, you could sell off your first lien to a note buyer, and it wouldn't be discounted too much, and you can keep those second liens as mailbox money coming in. You just want to know that if the first lien defaults, that you have the right to step in and take it over or buy it back so that you're not wiped out and losing your investment on your second lien. I like to make sure if I bought a property that it's less than what the first lien is after I've repaired it. So if something goes awry, I can get out of it and I'm making money on it. I just put in here that contracts are available, and the seller finance addendum is the second one. But your realtor can have those for you too. The ability to repay in Dodd-Frank, and that's where the RMLO comes in. I want to add though that Dodd-Frank requires that all mortgages have an escrow account if they're owner occupied for the first 60 months, which is 5 years. That it's not an option. If your buyer says they want to do it, well, then you're not in compliance with the federal government, the laws. And in Texas, the Texas Finance Code gives them a 10-day grace period. So you can't say your payment's due on the 1st, late after the 5th, and you owe me $100 the first day and $50 every day after it. Texas Finance Code says the maximum under a higher cost loan is 5% of the principal and interest. That's it. And if it's a high cost, it's 4%. I don't know if any of the high cost is actually higher than the higher cost, which I can only tell you that your Congress made them, which probably explains a lot.
So Amy, if I could, just one thing to be aware of too is that there are some loans out there today that have been around a while that are not escrowed. And I learned this lesson the hard way about letting them pay their own taxes, and I took it subject to. So I took it subject to, it was not escrowed, I sold it, and then let them pay the taxes, except they didn't pay the taxes. So what happens then?
We have better tax.
Well, so if the taxes aren't paid, then the county appraisal district, the county files foreclosure. What's that do to the lender?
Alerts them to the fact that the title's changed and they haven't been paid.
And they get excited when they're at risk of losing their asset because of taxes. So I ended up having to file foreclosure. I took care of the taxes issue, and I evicted, well, I foreclosed on, got the house back, and then I got it all settled up and taken care of. The mortgage company, so people ask all the time about what's the mortgage company gonna do? Are they gonna call it due and stuff? Well, they sent a letter to the seller, the original owner, and said, you have 30 days to get this property back in your name. What'd I do?
Mortgage.
Not a private lender?
I didn't do anything. I ignored them. I didn't ignore them, but I didn't call them either. We never put it back in the seller's name. We got the payments current, we got the taxes current, and I did put the house on the market and sold it. I started rehabbing it. I had an investor step in and buy it from me before it was rehabbed, and we got it paid off and it was fine. But, you know, a lot of people panic when they hear a lender trying to call a loan due. That's the only one in 19 years that I've ever even been threatened to be called due, and it was all because I let the buyer pay the taxes and he didn't pay them. Matter of fact, to make it worse, he didn't pay them twice. The first time he went and got a tax loan,
And you had to pay that off with all the interest?
except he didn't.
I said you did.
Oh yeah, I had to get it all caught up. But, you know, he just kept going downhill further and further, digging the hole deeper and deeper. So just a lesson learned for you. You can thank me for learning that lesson and sharing it with you, you know.
Was that
I just
part of
hope
your
you never
master's
do
degree?
that. Huh?
I call that part of my master's degree that I'm
Yeah,
working on.
exactly.
I have little things that come up on my
I'm always working on my master's degree. But seriously, you know, I'll never sell another house not escrowed because of that reason.
And if it's owner occupied, you really can't unless they put down greater than 20%.
Yeah, but it already had a mortgage on it that wasn't escrowed. That's what I'm saying. I took it over subject to.
I bet you had a new buyer. And it was I said you had a new buyer, so they needed to have an escrow account unless it was done.
Yeah. Well, this was quite a
2013.
few years ago that happened, but I won't do that again.
Teaser rates are not legal anymore. That came with Dodd-Frank. You know, going in and saying, ooh, it's 1% for the first 3 years, and then the rates just bounce up to 5 to 6 is not doable on a property that's owner occupied. What we have seen is lenders, because the rate is locked, they can't adjust anything for the first 6 years or 60 months, 5 years, is buyers having adjustable rates after 5 years to motivate them to refinance if they're wanting to refinance. But across the board, we based, because they'll pick something like the Wall Street Journal plus 2 points and says lender may adjust. But as the rates have stayed so low, we haven't had anything adjust. We pull them up, look at it. The only thing that would go down is down. The lender, you know, may adjust. The lender opts not to adjust the interest rates down because then they make less money.
So they're doing the adjustable rates because of the balloon restrictions, right?
Correct. So, you know, we did have one come in last week that has a 3-year balloon on it. That's not legal to call the note due in 3 years. Qualified mortgage. This is actually just a lot of legal stuff that an armadillo will take care of for you. Really key part is that you can't have excessive upfront costs and fees. They have to be within the compliance which your armadillo will take care of and make sure that their paperwork is in there. Oh, and the amount of debt they can have. It was at 43 and now it's at 50. I thought it was 51. This is an actual old copy because apparently the copy I emailed to Tim did not open. So luckily I brought it on a thumb drive because of backup. So we are gonna see in this a typo that was not caught. I tried to write performing, but my fingers move fast, so you're gonna see the word preforming, because that's a word. It did not get caught, but I caught it later and didn't recopy onto the thumb drive I brought in. So don't pick on me for my typo. Yes, I did use spell check.
We can fix it if you want, when you get there.
Yeah, that would require me to actually have a different pair of glasses on, because I decided to go with bifocals and not trifocals. So I can't really see a whole lot on the screen, which is why I'm turning my head to read over there. These are for like looking at medium distance and a far distance. I don't know if anyone else suffers from that, but apparently I magically got nearsighted and farsighted after I turned 40. And struggled for 3 years before I came in. This is what we talked about earlier. You know, a qualified mortgage and having an RMLO package, it's helpful. It's nobody's buying someone else's problem. Another thing I'd say is when you get your loan docs to review them, I always pull out my calculator and make sure that it's amortized correctly. I can't tell you how many loan docs we receive where loans just aren't amortized correctly, or they have typos regarding the date, where somebody just reused docs that they had before. We caught one that had a wrong property description, so we were selling the wrong, or buying the wrong house and selling it. People get busy and don't always do their own docs. They have someone draft them for them and they're proofing it, and they don't really double check the loan description. I pull mine off of the appraisal district and make sure they match. Sizes of funding. I actually like to use private investors when I'm borrowing money. I've had a lot of luck going to the Quest $1 Million Mixer and finding people who want to invest and covering the difference. So if they're wanting to go from 6 to 7 to 8 versus wanting to sell it at making a spread on it. I don't know if anyone's done that or understands what I just said. If you understood, raise your hand.
You need to tell them what Quest is.
Oh, Quest is a self-directed IRA company that's out of Houston, Texas. They have a Dallas office off of Montford, and I like to go up there and meet people and find people who want to fund things. A lot of people in self-directed IRAs have money that's out there, and they don't go out and find properties themselves, but if an investor has the ability and is able to do that, they at least have money moving out and working and making money, as opposed to just sitting in their account doing nothing, because they seem to be kind of frozen in fear of what to do. So that's what I was going to say. And there's hard money lenders out there. I've been known to do a few of them that are small. Robin, I know, does some that are smaller, just to investors that I've worked with already, and you know, get your money back. It's usually I do things from 3 to 12 months. Don't need anything with phone calls, so currently have everything out. Illegally foreclosing on a property. We had a packet come in with a deed in lieu pre-signed, just not dated. You can't pre-sign a deed in lieu at your closing. And then when they default, go record it, take your property back. That's illegal. You can't foreclose on a property without meeting the guidelines of, you know, posting it the 20-day, making sure that they're behind it appropriately. You have to apply payments when you receive them. You can't sit on them for 3 to 6 months, because you've actually got to issue a mortgage statement and an annual escrow analysis. To do an annual escrow analysis for your servicer or yourself, and you have an underlying mortgage, you have to have that underlying mortgage. I like to snip it, put it in paint, and like take out what the P&I is for the underlying mortgage, and then we put it on the escrow analysis that we do for the borrower, so it shows the breakdown of the taxes and the insurance. It is really important to get that insurance, the buyer's insurance, appropriately applied to an underlying mortgage, and making sure you're working with an agent who knows how to do that. It's Dave, right? Who was here?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does that. There's a couple out there that are really good at it. Your buyer has the option of getting insurance wherever they want. Just like I like to make a list of options for payments. I only use 3. Tim goes over and beyond with his 6. I just have to say that kind of blew me away that he had 6 options. But I like to make a list of insurance agents that I know do wraps so that, you know, they can kind of go towards people who are going to set it up correctly. And I just say that these are agents who know how to structure a wrap insurance and ensure that we get it applied to the underlying mortgage and that you're fully protected. They can choose to go to someone else. There are insurance companies that will not insure wraps. Safeco is one of them. American Home something. We had a house that was out in Wiley that got struck in that dust storm 3 or 4 years ago now, that came through the roofs, the windows, all the way down to the flooring inside. And the wrap policy that they had is they were going to pay on our wrap. So the investor and the homeowner ended up working together for the $36,000 in damages they had to their house.
The other thing with regards to insurance is that I've seen a lot of people go off, they won't listen to your recommendation, and they'll go off and get their family member who's an insurance agent or a friend of the family or something and get a policy, and it's through the roof. And if they're complaining about payments, you know, insurance is one place that they may be able to trim back. I'm sorry, if family or no family, you know, if they're taking them to the cleaners and have too high of a policy, they need to consider looking elsewhere. We have Los Padre that I think is super high, and they won't change it. So.
And people think they're getting a discount because their autos are there also. And you do get a discount, but if you're, we currently have one that has a home that's worth $85,000 is what they have a balance on their loan for. I think we looked it up to see what the appraisal district said it was $120. Their insurance is $3,600 a year, which is way out of line for a brick home. I mean, it's just outrageous, and they complain about their payments being high and that it was my fault, and I pointed out it was their insurance and they needed to shop it, but they have a discount because they have their cars there. That's what they told me. I said, okay, well, you might want to compare apples to apples and check out a few more places and make your payment more reasonable. Actually, they reported us to the state because they thought that their escrow was too high. But I had all the emails where we recommended they shop their insurance and they wanted that insurance, and so that actually, all we did was send the packet back with the information, and away that went, so it was off. But people will, okay, so there's my typo. I found it. Just side note. Does anyone have any questions about doing mortgage statements, issuing your borrower so they can see how they applied your payment? You have to show them what their escrow balance is on the statements. Are you taking a picture of my typo?
Well, I'm gonna fix it for you.
Okay. Sorry. I'm a little self-conscious about my typo when he's taking a picture of it. You can't charge borrowers unauthorized fees for default services. So if you decide to drive past that house every day, you can't send an invoice to your servicer and say, I'm charging $150 a day for every day I drove past the house. I have received those. If you're driving past once a month and you want to send us an invoice that says $15 that you made sure you went by, the house is occupied or secured, that's well within reason. But $150 for every time you drive past it is not a reasonable fee. You can charge them for the legal fees. Increasing force-placed insurance. So you decide that your borrower's insurance you don't like, so you're going to apply a second policy. Your buyer doesn't have to pay for your second policy. And you're only going to cause problems if there's two policies. So if there's a claim, now you have insurance agencies not wanting to pay out because someone else has a policy on it. And they're going to argue about who has to pay and your house isn't getting fixed. It's going to sit there with the blue tarp, even if it was a roof claim, if it's Texas. Another part about insurance is a lot of policies will come in really low and they think they have a smoking deal, but it's only fire and electric. But we're Texas, we're windstorm and hail, and you need to make sure those are on there because maybe we do have fires in houses, but predominantly it is windstorm and hail. Something we do is if a buyer has a claim that has over $5,000 on their insurance check, we get a copy of the adjuster's report and we'll either pay directly to the contractor or we're going to dole out money at $5,000 at a time until it's done. And we want pictures showing the work being done on the property. So, and it's not to be mean, but we're working with people who haven't owned houses usually ever before. And, you know, roofing companies fly into the area and make grandiose promises and leave with money. Another part of that is we have a lot of homeowners who are in the trades, or their cousin is in the trades, and they can do a family barbecue and get a roof on a house. And all they need is they'll get us a copy of a bill for Home Depot, or what is that called when it's the purchase order. And we'll issue a check for the purchase order because they're going to do the roofing themselves. And when it's done, we give them the extra money that's left. Sometimes they apply it to the principal of the mortgage, but the goal is to make sure that we have those pictures, because insurance agents are coming back a year later asking for proof the work's done. It's a whole lot easier for us to have those copies at the time it was done, looking pretty and shiny with no tree branches. And we have them on file, and we just upload them to the insurance and make sure their policy moves forward, showing that the work was done. Does anyone have a question on that? Yes?
So with the insurance, the buyer paid for it, but the insurance is in your name? Or how
It's in the buyer's name.
It's in the buyer. So how are you getting the check? You said?
At the bottom in the mortgagee clause.
Okay.
We service a lot of loans that are fractionalized, so there's multiple investors on it. And so instead of having to have all those investors listed, it says in care of August REI. And so we're listed on the mortgagee clause. Those are ones that are around free and clear and have multiple investors. We have investors that are out of the country. We have one in Hong Kong, Dubai, and Australia. So it lists their company name in care of August REI in our PO box, so that, you know, we're not overnighting checks across the sea to get them endorsed to have them come back to move forward on a claim. Because the goal is to get the house repaired, and especially if it's a roof. Does that make sense?
Yes.
On a wrap, it's going to list the insured, the person you sold it to. The first mortgagee clause would be, for example, Nation Star. And then the second one is the person that's on the loan at Nation Star. And then, so if you bought the house from Joe Blow, it would have the person you sold it to, Nation Star, Joe Blow, in care of your company name, whatever you'd like to put, so you get that billing. Sometimes they put our name to make sure that if it's not escrowed, or if it cancels, so we get a copy. You don't always get a copy as a second mortgagee clause. But trust me, that underlying mortgage is going to make sure your house is insured. When you get a statement in the mail and you open up that mail and all of a sudden you see this escrow analysis or notice the insurance is canceled, you know that you need to get that back on there. Something we see a lot of, and I think this actually falls to the investor, is their buyer buys the house, they come to closing with an insurance policy. The insurance policy is paid at closing, and then they see that they're paying taxes and insurance on their payment letter, so they cancel the policy they got and they get their cash back. They're not explained that that's like a Christmas savings account for next year's policy. And a lot of them just cancel it anyway because they just don't want to pay for it. They want that money back. And you know, I make it very clear to people that that's actually a violation of your loan. Your loan requires, your deed of trust requires you to have insurance on the property. If you don't have insurance on it, I'm going to put it on there, and it's not going to protect your personal property. It's just going to protect my interest. So if the tornado ripped the roof off, the roof will go back on, but if it sucked out all your belongings and then rained and destroyed your kid's PlayStation, that's not getting covered. So you need to keep your insurance on that house. Any questions on that? Writing false or misleading information in response to consumer complaints. You have to respond to them. It's a requirement, and they have to be truthful and honest. But I think that's, you know, the right thing to do anyway, and hopefully everyone in this room is doing that. Reg Z is part of Dodd-Frank that requires your borrower to have an escrow account. And I bolded and underlined that it is required if it's homesteaded. We did have a loan that just came in that was on a $300,000 house, but they put down $240,000, so their loan is only for $60,000, and their lender is letting them hold their escrow, but they definitely own more than 20% of that property, and that is allowed. I was pretty impressed someone came up with a $240,000 down payment. RESPA, it's just more guidelines and making sure it's the response to the big foreclosures that we had. and making sure that we're all following the rules. I think it actually went from stated income to way too many regs. Somewhere in the middle is probably, I think, the appropriate place we should be. That's not where we are. That's a personal opinion.
RESP is another reason to use an RMLO, correct?
Yes. And a servicer. You have to give out, so if you sell your note, you actually have to issue a notice to your buyer to let them know that their loan's been sold. It's been sold from, TMC Properties to, I want to make a deal. We have one that's a company, it's called that. And if servicing's changing or whatnot, you have to send them a letter and let them know ahead of time that that's happening. You have to send one, and the person who bought the note has to send one. If you're using a servicer, you can have them do both sides of that for you. So, two types. Did everyone know there's two types of owner finance transactions? Those with debt and those without. Is there any question on that?
So what did you say, those with what?
Debt, underlying debt. There's you have an investor on it, you have an underlying mortgage, you just don't own the property free and clear. So if there's no liens against the property. Something that's also handy, and I like to check on for my properties, and it's not something that'll pop up, is I go once a year at Christmas time. I did it while we were all home with the flu. I go to each county, the county clerk, to see if there's any liens, mechanical liens against my property, mowing liens from the cities or counties. I do have one that came up with 3 mowing liens. So we whipped out a notice to them to let them know that they were in violation and these need to be cleared, or that we would be paying them and they would need to pay us back, that they had 30 days to clear them. So it's always handy to check on that. We have one that came in that someone decided to put in a pool and got a mortgage or a lien or a debt for a pool, and then they didn't pay, and so they ended up with a lien for a pool. So, or a water softener is another one that we see come up, or windows. Windows I don't mind quite as much because they added value to the property, but I don't really want to have a property with a pool myself. Does anyone
Make
have
them
a
change
question?
the insurance?
Hmm?
Make them change the insurance when they put a rule in?
They didn't, but they had to. Yes. Does anyone have a question on what those words mean up there? Yes.
Not necessarily about the word, but just we've talked about like doing a wrap with either a subject to or like using a private money lender to create that note wrap around it. One of the issues that we've had with the lenders that we use, they want us to have a tenant or a lease in place in order to put like a conventional or a long-term loan on it.
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll say, there is a due on sale clause to this, just don't tell us what you're going to do with the note and the risk is up to you. Are there portfolio lenders out there that will support effectively just a wrapped mortgage? Or
Yes.
Okay.
There are.
Can you mention some of those?
How many people would like to know some of those?
Yeah.
Okay. That's 2. You can come see me afterwards. I don't want to overwhelm them because I still want to keep borrowing them.
Okay.
Just say no.
Fair enough.
I wanted to really dry up my own sources. But there are people out there. I have a lender that I work with that'll do up to a 20-year loan. And when borrowers pay extra the principal, I actually pass it through because I don't ever want to be upside down. Something also to add on a wrap mortgage, a PMI or MIP, which is private mortgage insurance or mortgage insurance premium, is a lender expense. So when you're calculating what your profit will be, so if you're looking, and it shows up on the escrow side of a statement, so you need to get a copy of that underlying mortgage from the seller that you're looking at taking over from and look to see if that is on there, because you're going to add that to what the principal is in your mind when you're making your calculation. And then you take your borrower's P&I, the P&I for the underlying, including the MIP, and the balance at the bottom is your profit. It's not a cost that can be passed on. Texas SML has ruled on that, which is Texas Mortgage Savings and Lending, which is actually we are under as loan servicers. However, after 5 years or so, you can request to have it removed. I made a template letter and on a couple of them, and you fill it out and put the underlying lien holder's name on it, ask him to sign it, and we mail it in and request that it be removed because it's been long enough. We had one come in, it was 15 years old and it still had it on there, and nobody just requested it to be removed, which is, they just kept paying extra money. It's a loss of money, and as an investor now you've actually increased your profit because it's coming off. So those are also handy to keep an eye on, and you want to make sure you include that, because if we have the loan come in and we see it on there, we're moving it over. It is your expense, because at the end of the day, we know it, and our job is to make sure that you're in compliance. Does that make sense? Okay. It's kind of like late fees after the 5th day. That's not allowed under the Texas Finance Code. We're going to adjust it to 10 days to keep it compliant, even if you're noted. An attorney is a for-fee attorney if they're closing. They will put in there what you want. You have to know what you need to have in there. Or you need to tell them I need it to be compliant to Dodd-Frank, so they make sure that they keep it compliant to Dodd-Frank and don't just put in what you want on there. And it depends on what kind of attorney you get with, and you want to make sure you work with someone who does owner finance notes. Can you guys hear me over there, guy? Shredding? Yeah, okay, just making sure. We good on that? Technical best standards, you want to make sure that buyer's coming in with a policy. I like them to come out with a binder. Our little hearts beat really fast when we see POC where it says insurance paid outside of closing, because it's not always paid outside of closing. And we've come across agents that are not quite as savvy, and they will give their buyer an invoice stating they paid for it, and it hasn't been paid for yet. And we were working with one who explained to him, if you don't have a policy on this because you've said it's paid for, you need to pay for it because we'll turn you in, because you're stating something was paid for and it was not. He stopped doing that. He was just a small little agent over in Garland. Then I just have the mortgagee clause part. It's really important to work with an agent and knows how to structure it and get it applied, get the original policy canceled so you're not carrying 2 policies, and they know how to interact with an insurance company. Does anyone have a question on that? Sorry. Okay, super small print, sorry about that. Important things to know when you do a wrap. You need to have the underlying lien holder social. If you're, and a secondary contact. Currently we have a mortgage in which the lender does not have a contact for the underlying lien holder. The mortgage has now been sold, and he's trying to figure out what the new loan number is, which technically if he had been receiving that mail to his house, he would know. So you want to change the mailing address on those mortgage statements so they're coming to you, your P.O. box. If you're out of the country, send it to your servicer. We're going to open it, scan it, look at them every month, make sure payment's been applied, or if it's a notice of insurance, or if it's being sold. You need to have that information. It's not okay. We have one lender who has passed away and can't sign a release of lien. So they're working with an attorney to get a release of lien on the property because they paid it off. At minimum, you need the last 6 numbers of their social security number. Citibank, if you're calling in for a payoff, requires the last 6 right now. It's best to have the whole list. If you can get a power of attorney, you want to be able to use that. Some mortgage companies require their own power of attorneys forms that they have, but at least if you have something. So maybe the mortgage company you start off with didn't require their paperwork, but it was sold down the line. These are the things that people run into problems on is underlying mortgages and not getting the information on there. Tim had one who couldn't get a payoff on. Do you want to share that one? That was exciting and fun.
Which one?
The underlying mortgage where we couldn't reach the underlying seller. Your lady this year. The underlying mortgage holder and the seller, the buyers that we were servicing the note for were getting very angry.
Oh, yes, the one we just did?
Yes.
So this was a deal that I bought, owner finance, not subject to, it was just straight owner finance. And I rented it for a couple of years, made a nice little profit on it. Then I sold it with an owner finance wraparound mortgage, just like I would have done with a subject to. and I had a balloon payment to my seller that was coming up this coming May. So I've been working